Hi, I'm Johnny Fines.
I'm Djalenga Scott.
And we are professional actors.
We've worked in film, TV, musicals, plays.
Lots of things. We first met on the West End production of Annie, the musical, with Miranda Hart and Craig River Horwood.
Directed by Curve's Nikolai Foster.
And we've been in other productions like
Chicago in the West End.
Hollyoaks.
Toured around America with Batman Live.
The Sound of Music.
West Side Story.
Avenue Q, lots of things.
All sorts.
And we're here today to talk to you about preparing to play a role or a character. And this is relevant whether you're in a Hollywood movie or you're in a school production or an amateur dramatic production or anything really. We find that the little bit of research and development you do before you even set foot in the room will help you so much when you come to start playing these characters.
If you feel completely comfortable about what you're playing and how you're going to play it, everything else can just go away. All the negative, any fear, it doesn't matter. If you know exactly what you're doing with a role or where she comes from, where he comes from, all of those things, but we'll touch on that.
Today we're going to be looking at two characters, specifically Rooster
and Lily St. Regis
from Annie,
the musical,
which we did together. And you should have some of that text with you if you need to reference it. But we're going to dissect it all for you right now. I think we should get started. We're going to look at bullet points to start with and start at the top and work our way through it. And by the end of it, we're hoping that you'll get a really healthy grasp of what it was like for that character and how they should act even before you've set foot into a rehearsal room.
Exactly, and we're going to make sure that we work through all the processes with you that we work through to get to that point where you feel really comfortable with your character.
These are things that we genuinely do when we get a job, that we look at before we even get started. And I found that if I do this work, it helps me so much more than if I just walk in on the first day and just guess, because there's just so much that you don't know about history and politics of the time that you'd need to research that would affect your character.
And it allows you as an actor to just be in the moment and feel the emotions that you need to feel without thinking, oh gosh, where am I? What am I doing? You don't need to think about any of that because you've already done all of that work. So you can just truly feel it and be honest to the character.
Yeah. So let's get started.
Yes.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is where. And when I say where, I mean where geographically are we? For instance, are we in England? Are we in Scotland? Are we in America?
Russia?
Gibraltar? I mean, all these things are going to make a huge difference to your character and the kind of upbringing they've had in certain countries. Like somebody who's been brought up in Russia is going to have a completely different experience to somebody who's brought up in Northern Ireland. So, for instance, in Annie the musical, we are set in America, and further than that, we are set in New York City. Now, somebody who's grown up in New York or somebody who's from New York is going to be completely different to somebody who's grown up in, let's say, Texas. The way of life is just different in different places. For instance, Texas is obviously thought of having a slightly slower pace of life, and New York is seen as having quite a fast-paced way of life.
Yeah, and that will have an effect on the way people speak as well. If you think about New York being busy, rushing around, so people will be talking really fast, and maybe in Texas they've got more countryside, they're a bit more relaxed.
Exactly.
But the accent is much slower, the pace that they talk in is much slower, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think with that, and it's like you get a layer and a layer and a layer and a layer. So, for instance, New York has got so many different backdrops as well. Like the New York City Municipal Orphanage is going to be quite a down in the dumps, poor, poverty-ridden place, as opposed to Daddy Warbucks' mansion on Fifth Avenue, which is going to be lavish and have lots of nice things and expensive things.
So even though they're both in New York, they're going to have completely different ways of holding themselves. Their dialect, everything's going to be quite different from their upbringing.
100%. So I think that's a good thing to research. Wherever your play is or whatever you're working on at that moment, find out where and then specifically where. And then it'll give you a really good idea of how that person has been brought up and the kind of way of life that they are used to. The next thing we're going to talk about is when. When are we in time? is it a specific time and date of wherever we're starting? For instance, are we in 1921? Are we in 2021? Or are we in 3021?
Also, are we in a real world? Are we in a fantasy world? So all of these things to consider.
Yeah, when something's set in a specific time and place, then there are certain things that you need to be aware of. Like if something's set in the future and we don't know what the future's like, then obviously you're a little bit limited with your research. But for instance, let me read to you the beginning of Annie the musical, because all the clues that you need to find about where you are should be within your script. The opening of Annie gives you all the information you need. So the overture ends and maybe underscores the following scene. The curtain rises on the New York City Municipal Orphanage Girls Annex. At stage right is the front hallway, and the dormitory covers the rest of downstage. Upstage, we can see a lamp-lit New York City street, and across the street, a row of tenements. Shortly after 3 a.m. on a chilly morning in early December 1933. Now that tells you all you need to know.
Very specific.
We're in December, it's 1933, and it's cold. The season, of course, makes a huge difference because, you know, it affects the clothes that your character might be wearing and therefore like how they hold themselves.
And if we know that we're in New York in December, what's it going to be like in
Freezing
December
cold.
in New York specifically?
So we're going to have, if we're outside, we're going to have coats, hats and scarves on. So we know that we are in 1933, which gives us a huge clue about some of the research we need to start doing. So specifically, what happened in 1933 in New York at that time? The first thing that I can think of is that America is in the Great Depression, and so that means that there's a lot of poverty everywhere. There's a lot of Hoovervilles, which were named after the president who's just gone, Herbert Hoover.
Do you want to talk about what Hooverville is?
Yeah, so a Hooverville is a shanty town or a makeshift town that's been built by unemployed and destitute people of the town.
So they've had to create something.
They've lost their houses.
They've lost everything.
And there's so many of them that it's not just like there's just one homeless person on the street. There's so many of them that they've had to create their own community.
Like villages. So they've called it Hooverville after this president that...
Herbert Hoover, who they deem responsible for the situation they're in now. But I can tell you that Herbert Hoover isn't president anymore, and FDR, President Roosevelt, sorry, I always get that wrong, it's Roosevelt even though it's spelt Roosevelt. Yeah, President Roosevelt has just come into power, and hopefully he can make things better for everyone.
And we can figure all of that out just from knowing the date and the time.
So that huge clue that it says 1933 December means you can just go onto Wikipedia and type, 1933 New York, and you'll just get a list of all the things that happened at that time.
And these are all real people as well. So we're in a world that is real.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
we can do the research because they're talking about actual characters that existed.
Yeah, it's not a fantasy world. We're not on a different planet or anything like that where we need to make it up ourselves and make it truthful for us. We actually have the facts around us. So what else happened in 1933 at that time? I can think that... go on.
I was going to say it was the end of the Prohibition.
It was indeed. And do you know what? I remember doing the research for this originally and being really interested to find out that Prohibition, which those of you who don't know is the banning of alcohol. America banned alcohol from 1920.
So it was completely illegal, wasn't it?
They banned it from 1920 until 1935. So no wonder everyone's depressed. But they banned it until, I think it was the 5th of December 1933 that Prohibition ended, which is basically when this play begins, the beginning of December. So already there's going to be a change in the atmosphere and a change in the time, which is going to affect our characters quite a lot. Obviously for the younger characters it's not, but for Miss Hannigan, who is a renowned drinker, she's obviously been doing it illegally for the last however many years, and now that Prohibition has ended, she'll be able to drink legally again. But that does make a difference to her character. And for Rooster and Lily, who are the baddies, they've been going to a lot of parties, I think, and
a lot of illegal
I think they used to call them
bars or
speakeasies, didn't
speakeasies,
they?
yeah.
When you had to go and knock on the door 3 times and they'd let you in. But all that's coming to an end now that prohibition's ending, and now that there's an FDR, the new president is in charge. That hopefully there'll be changes for everyone in a positive way. So yeah, knowing when we are is so important. Like
just from those few lines, we can get all of that information.
Exactly. So we know that we're in December in 1933 in New York City, and that's given us the chance to do some research about the time, the history and the politics, and just knowing that has already given us a better, a better ground for creating our characters.
So we know where we are, we know when it is, and we know some facts about that time and that place.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to look into the characters and the roles that we're playing.
So all of this work's been done just on generic time and location, and now we're going to start looking at our characters specifically. And all of the clues that we need to know about our character, they all come from the text. Like there's so much brilliant script in here that helps you create a character. And I think with plays such as Annie, the reason they've stood the test of time is that every single line in this script is there for a reason. Yeah, and I think that's true with any good script that's been around for a long time. And I remember specifically when I was working on Avenue Q, which is a show with puppets that I did a few years ago, is that one of the guys in the cast used to get a line wrong, and I think the line was, it was, "Hey Kate, you might not want to go in there for a minute," and the director stopped him and he said, "Oh, you're saying that line wrong." And he said, "Oh, am I?" And he said, "Yeah, the line is actually, 'Hey Kate, you might want to not go in there for a minute.'" And the guy who was playing the role said, "I thought that's what I said." And he said, "No, you said might not want to go in there for a minute," which means that you are putting the negative first as opposed to the positive first. And our show is all about putting the positive on a negative. So I might want to not go in there makes a difference to the whole piece. And I think at the time I remember thinking, wow, if you didn't know that information, you would get so many lines mixed up and you go, oh, what difference does it make? But all these lines are here for such a specific reason that we need to try and say them exactly as they are, because they all give you a clue about how the piece is supposed to be done and about how your character is supposed to act. So this is Lily and Rooster's first entrance. I'm going to read Miss Hannigan as well.
Oh, lovely.
So, because obviously there's 3 characters in this scene, so bear with me. Hiya, sis, long time no see. Rooster, oh God, it never rains, but it pours. They finally let you out of Sing Sing. I got 6 months off for good behavior. I'll bet. What was it this time? Some old geezer down in Yonkers said I swindled him out of $1,100. Oh yeah? Why'd he say that?
Because the Rooster swindled him out of $1,100.
Lil!
It's true.
Sis, I'd like you to meet a friend of mine from
Jersey City.
Jersey City. Miss Lily St. Regis.
I named after the hotel.
Which floor? Don't you just love Lily, sis? Yeah, I'm nuts about her. Rooster, do me a favor. Anything. Get out of here and take the St. Regis with you. Ah, come on, sis. Cannon, looking for another handout, huh? No, I got $80 coming in the mail Thursday. So all I need is 10 to tide me over. Not even a nickel for the subway, Rooster. A $5, Aggie. $5, I gotta laugh. Oh God, you with all your big talk gonna be living in Clover. This ain't exactly Buckingham Palace. Oh yeah? I'm on the city. Steady salary, free food, free gas, and electric. I'm doing all right. Sis, you're doing like I'm doing.
Lousy.
So that's the first scene. Now we can talk about it. Miss Hannigan says to him, "Oh, Rooster God, it never rains but it pours." And then she says, "They finally let you out of Sing Sing." And the first thing I thought when I was reading the script was, right, okay, what's Sing Sing? And Sing Sing is a maximum security prison in America. And that to me told me loads about Rooster before I'd even started. I mean, that's like one line into his entrance and automatically I know something about him that's really important. Like, for instance, a maximum security prison is going to be completely different to a minimum security prison. So the crimes that people do to get into those places are going to differ. So if Rooster was in a maximum security prison, the first thing it told me about him was, this guy's probably quite dangerous. So I need to make sure that he comes across that way. Even though this show is, aimed towards children and families, it still needs to be real. And one of the things I wanted to make sure is that I made my Rooster as real as possible. And so I wanted to make him have that sense of danger. The first thing I did was I looked at Sing Sing, and that told me loads about him, that, he's just got out of prison. He says that he got into there for swindling. So I swindled him out of 1,100 bucks. He swindled some old geezer out of 1,100 bucks, and I think that would not get you into Sing Sing. So whatever he did do to go into prison, I think he's lying to his sister about, because he doesn't want her to know just how bad it was.
Oh, also, you walk in saying, "Hi, sis." So immediately we know that he's Miss Hannigan's brother.
Exactly. So again, that tells you all I know. And so that also tells me, like, what kind of a relationship. Like, if any of you have got brothers and sisters, you're going to have specific relationships with them because you've grown up together. So that automatically, there's a sense of comfort and knowing each other that comes with being a sibling. So right away, I know that that's his sister, and that he's just got out of prison for probably doing something quite bad. And that's all within 3 lines of his entrance.
Do you want to just read it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Just so that you can get a sense of...
So we're going from the middle of the first scene we've given you, and I'll go from his first line into the room, and he says, "Hi sis, long time no see."
"Rooster, oh God, it never rains but it pours. They finally let you out of Sing Sing?"
"I got 6 months off for good behaviour."
"I'll bet. What was it this time?"
"Some old geezer down in Yonkers said I swindled him out of 1,100 bucks.
So also you get clues from Miss Hannigan saying, "What was it this time?"
So this has happened before. So you need to make sure that if you're playing Rooster or a character of this kind of ilk, that there's an air of mischief and danger about him, because he's obviously in and out of prison all the time. So right away, we know that he's no good.
And he's making jokes about it. "Oh, swindled,
Yeah, it was nothing, where it probably was. So that's how I started with Rooster.
So next up, we're going to look at Lily St. Regis, which is the character that I played. And on her entrance, before she's even said her line, it says, "Entering from the door, dumb and matter-of-factly," which I understand that being dumb, maybe she's not as educated, but the fact that it says matter-of-factly means that everything she says, she believes. So people might think she's stupid, but she does not think she's stupid. So when she says back to Miss Hannigan, because the Rooster swindled him out of 1,100 bucks, she means that sentence, and she really believes that actually when Rooster told her that that's what happened, and that's why he went to maximum security prison, Sing Sing, that's the reason why, and she just believes it, and that's it, and you can't mess with that. So she might be dumb, but she's strong, and immediately I've got that before we've even done anything. And also in the script, the big clue of saying that she is from Jersey City. So he forgets where she's from, and I've got that information there straight away.
So we know that she's not from New York City, specifically. She's from Jersey City, which is just across the bridge. So it's like not the centre of New York, it's further out. So we know that she's, and then when Djalenga is doing her...
You can look into Jersey City, what kind of accent you're going to be looking at, all of those things. Also, we've got proudly, she says that she's named after the hotel, the St. Regis Hotel, and she's saying that proudly like it's a really good thing. But the fact that she's named after a hotel, I mean, we can read into that, can't we?
Yeah. These are kind of things that you make for yourself. Like,
you make for yourself, but you're given this information.
There's facts in the script. She's from Jersey City. And then once you get into the fact, you can then decide things for yourself.
So even when Miss Hannigan is trying to take the mick and saying, "Which floor are you named after?" it says Lily doesn't get insulted. Because maybe she doesn't even understand what that joke is. Because, like it said before, she's dumb, but she's strong, and she's not insulted by that. She just probably thinks, actually, you're the stupid one. So there's all of that I took from that page, and that's how I understood that character. So we're given so much information in all this writing.
And as the scene progresses, we find out that Lily and Rooster have come to Miss Hannigan's office for one thing and one thing only, and that's to get money. And that tells you everything about them. That they're so desperate for money, and they even reference what kind of money, you know. So originally he asks her for a couple of bucks, and then that goes down and
and also it says it's got Lily is hand signalling him. So all these little things, even though Lily's not saying lines at this point,
she's
leading Rooster. So she's kind of controlling and saying, "Come on, ask for the money," and then she's saying, "Ask for 10, ask for 10."
Yeah.
And then when that doesn't happen, she's like, "Okay, we'll deal with 5."
And you know, and Miss Hannigan laughs at them because $5 is just nothing. Like, what's that going to last them? So if they're so desperate for a fiver, that just shows about how much money they've got in their pockets and how much they need it. So that automatically tells you a lot about Lily and Rooster, is that they've come from a bit of a dodgy place. We always imagine that they'd probably been at a party all night and they just run out of money.
And they just want a bit more cash to do whatever they want to do with it.
So they've gone to the first place they can think of, which is his sister. So right there, we automatically know so much more about the character from their first scenes.
And they also have no shame. Mm-hmm. They're not embarrassed to go in and ask for $5 from his sister.
Yeah.
Like, they don't care. They don't care what they look like.
Yeah.
They just want to get stuff.
And they're
greedy.
And we also know that they're met with with a bit of negativity from Miss Hannigan. She says no, no, no. So then they have to try and charm her into getting the money, which again shows us what kind of people they are. They're people who manipulate and who try and sneak their way to getting what they want.
And they don't give up.
Yeah, exactly. They're not put off by it. Just because she said no doesn't mean they're going to take it for an answer. And this scene goes into their first big number, which is Easy Street. And by the end of it, they obviously get what they want. And then they form their plan, which creates the storyline for the rest of the piece. So right from your first entrances are so important. So whatever first entrance your character has, look at the way they enter the scene and some of their lines at the beginning, because that will tell you an awful lot about who they are and what kind of character they are.
And both of these characters come in with confidence, don't they?
They both enter the room strong, which shows you that they're confident within themselves, even if they're pretending that.
Or even if she's stupid and actually hasn't got a clue about anything, she believes that she does.
Yeah.
So everything she does is with confidence. She wants money, she wants more.
Yeah, he wants anything. And we always believed that he was being driven by her. We always believed that Rooster was just going along with whatever Lily said, and Lily was the one pushing him to do it. Because even though she was dumb, she was still smart in different ways.
Streetwise.
Exactly.
And quite forceful. And also it made me think about the character and why would he listen to her and why would she have any control over him? And the conclusion I came to was, if she is streetwise and probably knows how to use her body, knows how to get his attention, she's very done up, her hair's done, she's got her nails painted.
Exactly.
She knows how to use every part of herself, and in her mind, her brains, she uses her brains, it's just in a different way.
Exactly. So that's all that information is from
just from
2 pages of dialogue.
And I think Lily's only maybe got two lines in that point, but there's just so much there to look at and to draw from.
And knowing that, imagine that, you saw this script for the first time and you were just reading it and going, okay, I'm just reading the lines. And now imagine reading that script for the first time, knowing the background of those characters and how you would just have so much more confidence with these lines, because you'd be like, I know where they've come from. I know.
You will have thought about your accent as well and how you want to speak, the pace that you want to speak at.
Yeah. So that's the first example of their first type of the script. So finally, we're going to look at the second scene that we've given you, and this comes at the end of the play, and we're going to see the difference between Lily and Rooster now as opposed to when we first meet them. For those of you who don't know, Annie is an orphan at Miss Hannigan's, and she's adopted by Daddy Warbucks, who's a millionaire, and then he does his best to find Annie's real birth parents, and he offers a reward to anyone who is Annie's birth parents, and Lily and Rooster hear this news, and they think they're going to try and swindle Daddy Warbucks and get the money. So this is when they come to the Warbucks mansion at the end of the play, pretending to be Annie's parents. So we're going to read a little bit of the script, and then we're going to stop and dissect it and talk about the characters and how they got there.
Excuse us, folks,
we don't mean to interrupt. Shirley, look. There's our Annie.
Who are you? Honey, we're your mom and dad.
Mudge. Mudge is the name, Ralph Mudge. And this here is the wife, Shirley.
You never knew it, dear, but you're Annie Mudge.
Annie Mudge? We was sick and broke, honey. We didn't know which way to turn. And a man gave us a chance to work on his farm up in Canada.
But we couldn't bring along no baby.
We loved you, Annie, but we had to leave you behind. Right, so automatically in those first lines we get an idea of the kind of characters that Lily and Rooster are again. They obviously have done their own character research because they are pretending to be other people. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated because now we're researching a character that our characters researched, if that makes any sense. Anyway, the way that Lily and Rooster play characters is obviously not the sensible way and informed way that we do. So, you know, they decide to put on accents because they're new people. So, you know, Rooster decides to put on a southern accent to pretend that he's a new person. But that's not necessarily the smartest thing to do, as we know in the script that they reference that from Canada. So there's no Canadian accent in sight, but they've decided to do a southern accent.
And Lily has decided to just try and make her own accent sound a bit posher. In her mind, that's her version of a posh accent to sound like Annie's mother. That's what I decided was going to be the best thing for Lily.
Yeah.
So we could make those choices ourselves. Really.
Yeah. And these are things that we'd come up with, because even though we're playing a character within a character, we still need to be true to the one that we really are.
Playing, yeah.
So that we still need to be Rooster and Lily playing these people, not Jonny and Djalenga playing these people, because obviously we do our research
and have a Canadian accent and think about all of those things, but like we know, Lily's dumb, so she just thinks she can get away with whatever, and if she just sounds a bit posher, then she'll...
Yeah, and Rooster thinks he's smart, so he puts on an accent, even though actually that's not the accent that he should have if he were in fact that character.
Lily's accent also isn't even really posh, I don't really...
Yeah.
She was just trying to be motherly or something, but...
Yeah, so automatically, again, within those first lines, we try and establish the character and the kind of people they are, and the journey that they've been on. Because like I say, this comes right at the end of the play, and they've been through so many other things before this. Like, they've had their big dance numbers and songs, they've had Easy Street, which is their big number with Miss Hannigan, where they concoct the plan, and now here they are at the end with their final product.
Finally got there to get all this money. So there's also, that's relevant too, because there's that energy of excitement and nerves of being found out.
Yeah.
And they're so close to getting this amount of money, but they've got to try and stay really calm and...
Yeah, and I think on that note, we should read the next bit of that scene. And let's go from... where do we finish?
Yeah, so Lily's just said, trying to be motherly to Annie, "You never knew it, dear, but you're Annie Mudge."
Annie Mudge? And we was sick and broke, honey. We didn't know which way to turn. And a man gave us a chance to work up on his farm in Canada.
But we couldn't bring along no baby.
We loved you, Annie, but we had to leave you behind.
Mr. Mudge, is it? We've seen a great number of people who've claimed to be...
Proof! I expect you'll be wanting proof of who we are. Well, here's our driver's licenses and Annie's birth certificate.
Baby girl, name Anne Elizabeth Mudge, born to Ralph and Shirley Mudge, New York, October 28th, 1922.
October 28th? That's my birthday.
It was in her note, sir.
Yes, I know, but... Mister, please, you gotta believe us! We got in on the Greyhound this morning, and we went straight to the orphanage to fetch our Annie, and the lady there said our baby was up here.
Oh, Annie! All the years I dreamed of holding you in my arms again.
Mr. Mudge, on the night Annie was left at the orphanage... Oh, here's something you wouldn't know about. But when we left Annie at that orphanage, we left half of a silver locket with her, and kept the other half. So one day...
Ralph, look. Annie's wearing it.
And here's the part that we kept. Yes, it fits. Perfect.
Oh, thank God, Ralph. She's our Annie.
She is. She is.
Oh.
Right, so, again, there's so much there that we can dissect that tells us about them again. So like Djalenga said, they're excited and sometimes their characters slip.
And
so
they get a bit carried away.
Like, you know, when Rooster screams proof, he knows that they're going to question him, so he's ready for the question, which of course his character wouldn't be if he was just telling the truth. So there's all these little nuances and head nods to them forgetting their character now and again, which is why Grace Farrell is a little bit suspect about them. So
in those moments, like if he's getting a bit carried away, and then I think Lily could probably be like, "Come on,
reels him back in.
Show what you've got, proof. We've got these things planned."
And exactly. And we've obviously got a formula as well. We know they're going to ask about certain things, and we know that our ace card is that we've got the other half of the locket, which nobody else knows about. And we can't wait to tell them that. Like, we're desperate. We're saying, we've got the birth certificate, we've got this, like, we've got, and
just give us the money.
Just give us the money. So again, it's the desperation, and we know that they're desperate people, and we know that they'll do anything, you know. I know that he's been to maximum security, and he knows he's so desperate for $5 that he goes to find his sister. Yeah. And right now, we know that they would do anything because of the previous scenes. In this scene, they would do anything to get that money. So they're ready for it. And again,
and like there's this moment here where Rooster talks. He's saying, "Mister, please, you've got to believe us." Well, I did a really bad reenactment. This section here, just read that section for me.
Mister, please, you got to believe us. We got in on the Greyhound this afternoon and went straight to the orphanage to fetch our Annie. And the lady there said our baby was up here.
And then it says, clutching her a little too tightly, and it's almost like reading that. It made me, when I was playing Lily, think, quick, we've got to show how emotional we are. Rooster's really going for it. Yeah. I need to go for it too. I'll grab the child and I'll hug her and I'll just squeeze her like it means everything. And there's that information there.
It's straight in the script.
There's everything there, and the same here, like you come straight in here.
Yeah, and you know, even when Grace says Grace Farrell playing detective, we know that by that means that she's trying to figure out whether these guys are telling the truth.
Yeah.
And the fact she's even thinking whether they are or not shows that they're not quite doing the job.
They're not really convincing anybody, but they can't do anything because they've got these facts. They've got the locket and they've got...
Yeah, they have all the proof, but there's something a little off. So when we're playing these characters, we need to make sure that we're not too convincing, because otherwise they just give us the girl and the money.
Exactly. So there's something a bit off about them, which makes sense if they've created these characters with a southern accent and a random accent, and they're just not, there's still that element of danger underneath them for Grace to be suspicious, and for them not, they don't open them, they don't welcome them with open arms, and they're not like, oh, we found her there. But there's like, also the underlying fact that they've also fallen in love with, like, they love Annie, don't they?
Yeah,
so they don't
Warbucks
really
and Grace, they
don't
want to give her away. And there's also that desperation from Annie, is that she wants to believe that everyone, well, that anybody who has this proof really is their parents, even though she doesn't want to leave Warbucks either. So that's the end of our class on how to prepare to play a role. We hope you find it interesting and taken a lot from it. I think all those things are really necessary. Find out where, find out when, find out the character's journey, and look at the script, because all the information you need is going to be there, and then you can start your research from then. And it really will just give you the great foundation for when you start going into rehearsal rooms and start reading this script. I can't recommend it enough.
Valuable information, and it's all there for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, bye!